Hello and welcome to Ephemera. I am fantasy author Katie Brisky.
And I'm editor Jen R. Albert. We hope you are enjoying our theme music, courtesy of Alex White, who is here with us tonight. Welcome to anyone joining us for the first time, and welcome back to those of you who have visited our virtual home before. For those who are new, Ephemera is an award-nominated reading series chaired by Katie and myself.
Pre-COVID, we held events in the Glad Day Bookshop, and we are thrilled to have you join our birthday jubilation right here on YouTube. And we would like to begin tonight by acknowledging that the land on which I live and work is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. This land is covered under Treaty 13 and is part of the Dish with One Spoon.
And the land on which I live and work is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas, and is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. Additionally, this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Every year in November at Ephemera, we celebrate our birthday. And right around the same time every year, the UN holds their annual climate summit. The 2022 United Nations Climate Conference is also known as the 27th Conference of the Parties, COP27, is in its final days right now in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. This year, they've invited a number of Indigenous delegates from all around the world to speak on panels, including some from the Yukon and the Northwest Territories, where warming threatens Indigenous communities' way of life. These groups exist on the true front lines of climate change and are the ones who stand to lose the most, the soonest. The International Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, their latest report on the impact of global warming on our planet was looking dire. Global emissions must fall by 45% by 2030, which is very soon, to have any chance of achieving the Paris Agreement goal of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Indeed, the conference opened with cries from global leaders stating that it is now virtually impossible to limit warming to 1.5 degrees. We're in big trouble. And unfortunately, the majority of solutions on offer are feeding the same systems that got us here in the first place. Importantly, for the first time, the IPCC's report refers to colonialism as a major historical contributor to climate change, though not in the section that offers solutions. Unfortunately, the COP27 conference did not get the memo. Chief Nanawa, who is a hereditary chief of the Huini indigenous people of the Amazon, whose ancestral lands have been devastated by industry-led deforestation, is also at the conference and has been hugely disappointed with the solutions that global leaders have on offer, saying, quote, "The vast majority of the discussions reproduce colonial patterns of unsustainable economic growth, ecological destruction, and indigenous dispossession that have been responsible for climate destabilization in the first place. Despite extensive participation of diverse peoples and communities this year, there are fewer critical perspectives at the table. The consensus seems to be that green multicultural capitalism, a carbon neutral, more inclusive version of capitalism, inclusive is in quotation marks, will prevent further climate catastrophe." Chief Nanawa goes on to write that the conference needs to emphasize critical engagement with historical, systemic, and ongoing harm, centering Indigenous voices and rights, and to do the difficult work of repairing and rebuilding relations. Indigenous people are paying some of the highest prices in the climate crisis, even when they have some of the most positive impacts and lowest emissions. Indigenous groups are the best stewards of their ancestral environments. It's important that we recognize Indigenous sovereignty when making climate mitigation laws and plans, and that we rethink the capitalist and colonial ideology that got us here. Carbon offsets and mining for more batteries are not going to cut it. We have to think bigger than that. A part of climate action should be a focus on decolonization efforts and land back movements, as this is one of the clearest paths to not just social justice, but also to climate justice. Thanks.
And we would like to welcome you once again to our third birthday event. That's right, we've taken another journey around the sun together, and this little reading series is now 3 years old.
Through COVID and calamity, you've kept us going this long, and we've been privileged to host some truly incredible readers and performances, as we do tonight.
I was gonna say, and tonight is no exception. And in this time of intense change in SSF writ large and in the wider world around us, we are so very grateful for all of you and we're pleased that we get to celebrate the birthday of our beloved little skeleton deer with you all.
And what a party we have planned. So let's kick it off with some readings. I am pleased to introduce our first reader tonight, Brandon O'Brien. Brandon O'Brien is a writer, performance poet, teaching artist, and game designer from Trinidad and Tobago. His work has been shortlisted for the 2014 and 2015 Small X literary competitions and the 2020 Ignite Award for Best Speculative Poetry, and is published in Uncanny Magazine, Fireside Magazine, Strange Horizons, and New Worlds, Old Ways, Speculative Tales from the Caribbean, among other places. He's the former poetry editor of Faya, a magazine of Black speculative fiction. His debut poetry collection, Can You Sign My Tentacle, available from Interstellar Flight Press, is the winner of the 2022 Elgin Award. Welcome, Brandon.
Hello, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
I'm very excited to share this space with you all. Ephemera does really cool work, and I'm very glad to be one of your readers this evening. I will be reading from Can You Sign My Tentacle, because it's the thing that I love the most and is like lodged in my brain. It is not a book full of Jubilation, but the parts of Jubilation that I do find I will share with you this evening. The first poem that I'm going to read is The Sailor Boys. We are some rebels, yes? We don't still sneak out the window close to midnight with we sailboards under we arms, scaling the outer island walls to ride the winds. Up here, we ibis free. The bellies of we boards scarlet or yellow like kingbirds, cutting the gale like skipped stones could split water. We are some aves, yes? Watching cormorants stain in the black water beyond the beaches where rigged exploitations did catch fire but couldn't have enough water to douse it. We are some blessed ones, yes? My mother did say we was once like the black gold and white collar world of the developed, all of their bigger pictures with no solutions, but we let all our colors fly. Like us boys, doing now before sunrise. We are some fresh starts, yes? We just soar over sighing tragedy, the heaving high tide of Mamadlo short of breath, and laugh, clear the wind on as we float. We are some rebels, yes? In the interest of finding joy, a lot of this collection is about finding joy in some of the most frustrating circumstances from which we can find joy. The ways in which we make hope when hope is potentially difficult. And I often, especially during the pandemic and given the last like 6 or so years, the ways in which we find joy in fraught times has been particularly important to me, because as marginalized people, as people who are struggling with financial and social difficulties all over the world, it becomes very important to let people know, hey, sometimes things are bad and not ideal, but there is something that you can still do in that unhealthy circumstance that makes living easier and more sustainable for the people that you care about. And in that vein, one of my favorite poems, the very last poem in this collection, is a poem that was published in Uncanny Magazine. It is the one poem that I'm still always very delighted when people who don't read speculative poetry are like, I found this poem in the wild and it gave me a great deal of joy, so I'm sharing it on Twitter. So I like reading it as well. It's called Drop Some Amens. The holy barons rumble through the untended slum gardens against the highway and drop payloads. If the halocopters hear you scream from downstairs, you get one from on high, and it makes a whistle on the way down and falls against your prayers. It goes through one girl's bedroom ceiling, and suddenly her college first pick knows how to spell her name, writes it on a very eager letter to her mother. It falls over the edge of the general hospital, and my neighbor can breathe without burning through the bullet wound. Bam! Over the house on the hill, and she can afford to fix her eye in Iceland without having to beg. And bam! In the river on the other side, and no more coughs or cholera in the news the next morning. And bam! Wins a granny the lottery 1 week so she can keep her lonely son clean. And bam! Loses an uncle the lottery the next so he can keep his lonely heart clean. And against the stained glass for more baptisms than burials. And against the muzzles of things lost in the street for less bad news than boys made new. I don't know who calls in the coordinates, where the map's pushpin pricks turn into precipitation, but God, look at the damage littering this place. It's spare and rare, but cratering, changing people's whole lives with one whisper of gravity. I just wish one day one of those prayer bombs could fall on me. And very briefly, I'll just share one more. There, in Can You Sign My Tentacle, as the title implies, the entire book is about what if the gods of the Cthulhu mythos came down to Earth one day because they really wanted to get someone's autograph before they left town. A lot of that is, what if a rapper just met the Lovecraft mythos and doesn't have any time to deal with how weird this is because they're doing something important. There is one poem that is not about hip-hop, but about Trinidad Calypso. It is one of my favorite of this series of poems, and yet I have never read it more than maybe twice since this book has come out. So I'm giving you a treat for your birthday. This poem is called Cthulhu Reminisces Upon the Mighty Sparrow and Lord Melody's Autographs. Sometime in the late 50s, I was just lingering in someone's fair of flying when I noticed them. Rum in their cups, huddled over scribbled lyrics and laughing, from Piarco to New York City, on their way to let Belafonte plant Calypso in the garden. I think Melody just figured me ugly. Some more kind family's well-meaning man offered a tea-warm smile as his pen skipped paper. Sparrow dances a marker over the corner of the sleeve of the slave without a glance. Not like he was being cold. Under his breath, he mutters how he's tired of Obia following him. I thank them. They nod short, and for a moment, they fell quiet. Then their muse's fury flares anew in tighter whispers. Before I could lean to sneak a sight of the results, Mr. Francisco hums a tune, and the shadow I came through starts to close. And that's all I'm going to read for this evening. Again, happy birthday to Ephemera. I'm very glad to be here. I'm very glad that you let me read. And I'm very excited to hear what everyone else has to share this evening.
We are so excited to have you. Thank you so much for being here to celebrate with us. What a way to start the evening. I love both. I think the idea of finding joy in unlikely places is a theme we carry very close to our hearts here at Ephemera. As well as, just the realism of sometimes it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes you got some undead deer in there as well.
Yes, sometimes. I've heard a lot of stories about those deer, but that's a completely different conversation.
We'll save that for next year's birthday, but thank you so much, Brendan. That was wonderful, and we appreciate the treat of being able to hear your poetry.
Nice, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And after the great success of our Pictionary game last year, because of course it is not a party without party games, I'm feeling like we need another game for our third birthday.
I know. I have the perfect one. Charades.
A classic. I would have also loved Pin the Tail on the Prancy, but I haven't quite figured out how to make that one work virtually yet.
Okay, maybe next year. For now, The audience, please drop your suggestion for a charade word in the chat. KT promises not to peek.
Oh yeah, of course. I absolutely am not going to peek. In fact, while you drop your suggestions in the chat, I will introduce tonight's performer. Alex White was born in Mississippi and has lived most of their life in the American South. Alex is the author of the Star Metal Symphony Trilogy and the Salvagers Trilogy, as well as official novels for Alien, The Cold Forge into Charybdis, and Star Trek, DS9 Revenant. They enjoy music composition, calligraphy, and challenging subversive fiction. And they also wrote the wonderful theme music that we enjoy every month. Welcome, Alex. We are so glad to have you here tonight.
It's good to be here. Thank you very much. Oh. So, yeah. So do I start now? Is that what we're doing? All right.
Yeah, go for it.
Hi. Okay.
Stage is all yours.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Well, the name of this song is Fight and Storm, and I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Leaves vermilion on the breeze. You say that I'm not wanted, but I know it's a lie. Say I don't know what to say, and now you won't let me stay, no matter how hard I try. So close to the end, but I'll try anyhow to breathe, to find the words to speak, to tell you that I need you, and I'm not backing down. Trains rattle, tracks passing by, interstates hum under autumn skies. I can't watch you go, not until you know. Love, you say it's not enough, you say that you'll be too rough on my heart made of glass, but you forget the truth, that I was always here for you throughout our past. Misty rain, neon signs, watching you, I'm frozen here in time. Don't walk away. One last thing to say. Give me all your fight, give me all your storm, and I'll give you my love to keep you warm. Give me all your fight, give me all your storm, and I'll give you my love to keep you warm. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So, this next song I wrote kind of at the beginning of the pandemic. Let's just say things looking pretty dicey when I wrote it, so I thought I'd like to share it with you all. The name of this song is called Stay. When the stories wind down, the voice is not so loud. The party's over, empty drinks like ghosts haunt the grounds. The dawn will come, another sun will grace the skies, and I don't know what I'll do when I'm alone. And I'm wondering how many more of these we get before they're gone, and they're just the times we had. And I'm thinking how every time we part the distance grows, but it won't be that bad if you would just stay just a little bit longer. Hey, I knew this couldn't last forever, but you know that I'm not ready. Stay just a little bit longer. Hey, hey, I really thought that we could have this always. They leave us apart. We don't have the time. We don't have the heart. I know I walked away. I regret it now. Should have taken the time to say, this is wonderful, and I hope this never ever ends. But I know that we have to face the sunrise. This is meaningful to be standing here with a friend. When you're gone, then I'll miss you in the moonlight. I'll miss you in the moonlight. I'll miss you in the moonlight. Won't you just stay just a little bit longer? Hey, I knew this couldn't last forever, but you know that I'm not ready. Stay just a little bit longer. Hey, I really thought that we could have this always. Stay just a little bit longer. Hey, I knew this couldn't last forever, but you know that I'm not ready. Stay just a little bit longer. Hey, hey, I really thought that we could have this always. Thank you.
Thank
And that's
you.
it.
Thank you, my friend. Something I really appreciate about your music, you have such a gift for texture and soundscape in your music. It's always just such a treat to listen to because there's so much to listen to, you know?
There's exactly one instrument in your theme, but I do appreciate that. No, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You know,
I guess
since
you have range as well.
since I just finished, I am gonna show you. Like, there's all this stuff that is involved, but it's there. It works. So
It does. It works incredibly well. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you for the beautiful theme that
Thank
opens our show each and every month.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
I appreciate it so much.
All right, and I believe it is charades time, and
Yes,
I am beyond ready
there
for this. I
was
don't know
a
what's gonna
great
happen,
suggestion in chat, which I'm
but-
not going to do because it's going to take all night, but I will tell you what it is after and do the easier one. Okay.
All right. Okay, 2 words. They're 2 syllables. 2 syllables.
Mm.
Two. Just 2. Okay, 2. 2. Deer, antlers. 2 deer. 2 antlers. I should probably mention I'm not very good at charades, so
Okay.
one. Ear. One-eyed deer. Deer with a single antler growing out of its eyeball. They do that sometimes. Eye socket. Corpse. You did a lot. Like I feel like you were more skilled at Pictionary than I am skilled at charades, to be honest. Okay, let's
We're
try
almost
one more time.
there. You
Okay.
did get one of the
Antler.
words.
Antler. Antler. Ant. Horns. Deer. Deer. Okay.
It's 2 words.
Okay. Deer.
When you,
Deer.
it's 2 words and you got one of them.
And I got deer.
Okay.
Okay. Oh deer. No deer. Dead deer. Undead deer. Skeleton deer.
Very close.
Bone deer. Horrifying
you.
deer.
Yeah,
Bone
no.
deer. Okay, to be fair, bone deer is tricky. But I'm glad we're up to the challenge. That was delightful.
I don't know how to do bone. I was trying to do sounds like, but it's
Oh yeah, I wasn't gonna get
There
that. I'm like not that well versed in charades.
Oh, great job. You still got it. Okay. I'm not very good at charades either, obviously, but that was great.
I feel like
super
the
fun.
fault was in my interpretation rather than your performance.
But
we
there
must have
are
fun
rules
with-
to charades.
That I don't need rules, you know this.
No, it's true.
But
It's true.
But I am keeping an eye on the time, so I believe we have
Yes,
more party games
we
and fun in
do.
store.
We sure do. And since we do have a lot of ephemera friends too,
Yes.
Plantation III, the Swamp Witch, regulars, Fred the Donation Dragon, who's returned to their dragon home for a while.
You know, one of my favorite things actually about parties is making new friends. So maybe the audience can help us decide on a new friend to bring into the series next year. Maybe we could have a space pirate, or Will, the Will o' the Wisp. It's funny because it's funny. Or a
I like it.
thank you, or a fanged sea creature from the deep.
Okay. Space pirate, Willow the Wisp, Will, the Willow the Wisp, specifically, or a fanged sea creature to be named from the deep. I mean, they definitely sound like our type. While you vote in chat who our new friend will be, I am excited to welcome our next reader. Selena Middleton is a Canadian writer and educator who sometimes writes stories as Eileen Gunnell Lee. She has stories in Nightmare Magazine, Escape Pod, Reckoning Magazine, Celine Quarterly, Fusion Fragment, and others. She is also a publisher at Celiform Press, a new Canadian press publishing speculative climate stories. Excellent press, please check it out. Living halfway up the Niagara Escarpment in Hamilton, Ontario, she regularly meets deer, maybe skeleton deer, I'm not sure, foxes, coyotes, cloaked riders on horseback, mushrooms of ambiguous intent. That would be another great friend for us. And can be found on Twitter at Eileen Gunn, or you can find her at Stelliform Press on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Stelliform Press, and on the web at stelliformpress.com. I will share those links with you. Welcome, Selena.
Thank you, Jen. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, everyone, as well. And let me just pull up my file here. The theme of Jubilee was super challenging for me, but I think I've come up with something, and it actually has a deer in it, so it works. All right, here we go. So I'm going to read The Wolf Boys of Wide River County, which was published in Little Blue Marble. New year, new rations, same drought. The Wide River, still a dust bowl between the public house and homes to the south, the farms beyond. Despite the heat, people trickled in to pick up their water, even the outsiders, the temp workers here for the new development. They needed a drink too, I supposed. The mayor lined up with everyone else during the after-dinner rush, looking less polished than usual. The broad green sheaths of her hair were flat, her skin shining with sweat. She leaned toward me and whispered as I lifted her water ration to the bar top. Her voice, like wind through the leaves, sent shivers to the ends of me. She never talked like that, not when she was campaigning anyway. She said, "The Wolf Boys are coming, Raoula. I have it on good authority." "You want me to change the locks and send them away?" We both laughed, but there was something dark as dirt behind her eyes, even as her men collected the water and ushered her away. The Wolf Boy must have killed his bike's engine and coasted into town. A Wolf Boy never padded into town like an animal with a secret. With Wolf Boys, it was all whooping and howling, screaming and snarling, except for Rush when he came for me. It was past 3 a.m. when he jimmied the lock, having refused my offer of a key as something too forward, too conventional, too permanent. He'd had a lot to say then, after our first night together, about the optics of a Wolf Boy having a key to an apartment belonging to the Dyke Fox at the public house. He'd insisted on this charade, and I'd let him keep it. There was so little comfort in this world for tender souls. But now I was dressed and sitting with my gun in my lap. As he crested the top step, it was primed and pointed. A girl couldn't be too careful. When I confirmed it was Rush, though, I tucked the gun into my bedside drawer and retrieved what I knew he was here for. The leather straps were soft and cool on my fingertips, the bare skin of my thighs. He shook his head even as he pulled off his shirt, revealing raised hackles all the way from nape to ass crack. "Raoula, I have to tell you something." Rush's body was a reed primed to the currents of feeling. Even the thick fur that covered his shoulders, the backs of his arms, rippled and flicked in response to the smallest stimuli. I couldn't help but blow a hot breath over his back and watch the dance of Rush's anxiety in the gradient waves of his hair. "After," I growled. And he did tell me after, when he was pulled and panting in my lap and my hips were still aching with the effort. "It's the mayor," Rush said. "She called us down. She has a job for us. It's messy. You're not going to like it." After Rush left, I hauled all the whiskey I had up to the bar. The Wolf Boys could be particular, but not that particular. 1 case of Maker's Mark and 2 of Jack. If the Wolf Boys were here for a job, we were going to need it. Rush was at the bar, weight on his elbows, as he perched at the edge of his seat like he was nursing hurt. I mixed a gimlet, feeling the sting of the lime on my fingers, and slid it down to him, undecided if it was an apology or a provocation. But before we could get into it, a wolf girl I'd not seen before pushed up to the bar, turned her jaw to me and yawned, long tongue lolling. On closer inspection, maybe not a girl or a wolf. It was hard to tell these days with everyone mixing their own genetic cocktails. Girls, boys, envies, wolves, foxes, martens, snakes, trees. I didn't give a fuck. If you ran with the wolves, you were good in my eyes. My thing for the mayor was an aberration in that regard, but I'd had my eye on this willow splice for a while, ever since she was not much more than a sapling on town council. I'd always liked soft things, and Rush was evidence of that. But he was a soft thing that others mistook for hard, him being a wolf boy and all. The mayor, though, she was a different kind of creature, and this business with the wolves had already gone some way to confirm it. The way she hedged around what needed to be done, carefully weighing impacts before setting a plan in motion, the way she wore that consideration in the bend of her body, told me what I needed to know about the shape of her heartwood. Turns out it was the mayor that the young wolfling was eyeballing. Together, we watched her gather her long limbs, shaking like an aspen as she moved to the back room with the biggest wolf boys. I counted the minutes in poured drinks and glasses washed and dried, but the mayor did not emerge until near closing. Even then, she appeared well after the wolf boys had gathered up their ranks and screamed into the hills. That night, the first of the outsiders from the developers' camp went missing. I was tacking the week's new posters to the community board when the mayor swept past me, her leaves brushing the bare skin on the backs of my arms. She didn't turn to look at the faces of the missing, each of them with a wide, vacant gaze, some with horns or antlers unfiled. They were pictures taken from the developer's employee identification database, the stark lighting emphasizing a herbivore's backwards glance, as if each of the missing knew upon signing up for the job that they would become targets, that they were already prey. The mayor, though, she held her gaze straight as she pulled up to the end of the bar. But by the time I got her a glass, she was weeping. I poured golden Solera deep and watched as she gulped it down and pushed her glass back to me. She was so beautiful, even as she trembled with sorrow. Her knotted skin was a dark gray green, black where her tears fell. Remember that experiment they did in Lamar Valley? She asked, touching her glass to her lips and putting it down again without drinking. The reintroductions of Mackenzie Valley wolves, how it produced a chain of effects that the scientists hadn't anticipated. The predators controlled the grazers, which allowed for vegetation to grow, which then brought the waters back to the land. Her words were slurred, even as she breathed through the burn of her third drink. I held my tongue, the whiskey in one hand and my hope gripped in the other. We have too many grazers, too many who will take a bite out of anyone and anything they can. I had to call them, Raola, the wolves. You understand, don't you? I nodded. I didn't think it would be so hard. You understand that, don't you, Raola? I didn't think I would have to be so hard. Please, give me another drink and take me upstairs, like you do with your wolf boy. With my heart choking me, I closed my eyes, shook my head, swallowed. Next time, Wyla, if you still want it. I dream of Wyla in my bed a year later. My tongue in the crooks of her rough skin scraping me raw. I dream of her even though she sends her men to pick up her orders, even though she walks by even without looking at her own reflection in the pub window. A year later, after the signs on the community board have faded, after the wolf boys have roared their return to the hills, I still dream of Wyla. I dream that she will come to me, that she will lay down her grief, give up her shame, and say, Raola, I did what I had to do, and look what's come of it. I dream that her leafy crown will shake with laughter as she says, of course I did it for myself, for my people, the trees, but all of you will prosper too. These dreams stay with me. They have made a home inside me, cool, verdant, growing. My dream Wila is still with me when I come downstairs and wade through river water 3 feet deep. The power of it having collapsed the shelf behind the bar some weeks ago now. In the current, bottles bob about like they have urgent messages to deliver. Broken glass glints beneath clear eddies. I scoop some of the water, impossibly cool and clean, into a glass and drink. And that is it. Thank you.
Ah, that was wonderful. I love when sometimes we get these kind of spontaneous themes that emerge organically from amongst our readers. And I feel like Joy in Unexpected Places is one that's emerging tonight.
A complicated kind of joy for sure, but
Yeah,
definitely appropriate for Jen's introduction to COP27 at the beginning.
100%.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
All right. So, I know we're all dying to hear, who are we welcoming to our merry band next year?
Very, very good consensus across the board. A thinged creature from the deep. We even have a name.
Oh, good.
But Kari and Kitlin have named them Kevin Kelp.
Okay. All right, Kevin Kelp, welcome to Ephemera. I can't wait to meet you in 2023 and go on many adventures.
Yes, yes. I can't wait to meet them either. Birthdays are always a good time for new friends and also for wishes. Can everybody make a wish for Ephemera for Prancy?
Yeah, tell us what you want to see, like also very genuinely, like birthday wishes, yes, but also what do you hope this community grows into over the next year?
We would love to know, and please do say so in the chat. They might just come true, you never know.
And while you do, I am very pleased to introduce our final reader tonight. Having written 23 novels and counting, published by her beloved Daw Books and Hugo Award-winning editor Sheila E. Gilbert, as well as numerous short stories, and editing several anthologies over the past 25 years, Julie E. Czerneda was inducted in the Canadian Science Fiction and Fantasy Hall of Fame in 2022. Julie's works combine her training and love of biology with a boundless curiosity and optimism. Imaginings, which was out in September, is Julie's first short story collection. And November, in fact yesterday, I believe, sees the release of her standalone science fiction novel, To Each This World. Julie is represented by Sarah Medjibo of KT Literary. And you can find more at www.czerneda.com. Welcome, Julie. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you. This is actually a dream come true. Jubilation to all. This is your reputation precedes you, and I see it as well deserved. Thank you. Yes, I'm delighted to do a reading from my new book that came out yesterday. I will give you just what you need to know in order for me to read this passage, because the theme of jubilation, I thought, and found joy, that actually works in really well, unexpectedly so. We're in a far future. There's a new Earth, and 200 years ago, they have sent forth sleeper ships to start new colonies in 100 years space, in time away, and take the 100 years to come back and say, yes, we made it. But unfortunately, now that's a problem. And Earth has sent the Arbiter, Henry, out there to bring these people back quickly because there's a danger out there. And I won't get into what the danger is, but it's real. And he's on his own, except for the fact that he has an AI companion named Flip, who manifests as a flying saucer because that's what you would do. And he has a committee of sorts that he can consult, experts he can consult through a neural net in his brain. And there's a pilot, and on the alien portal that they're using to travel, it's owned by the Comet. And the pilot is human, and her name is Killian. And they get to a new world. Each sequence is very different. And they've just arrived at one, and they've done some remote sensing. Killian sent down satellites around, and they've seen some things. He's down there now by himself on the ground, except for the voices in his head. Meanwhile, Killian is listening in. Pilot Killian, your thoughts? Killian leaned on her elbows, calm in her hands, eyes riveted on the feed from the sat over Henry's location. What she thought? Wouldn't catch her with fucking skeleton people, let alone going with them into a fucking cave. I think he's doing fine, Flip, she said aloud. Her next thought she kept to herself as well, that she'd give anything to be down there right now, preferably with something more powerful than a stun field. It would probably mess his play. Henry had his wits and his words, and her lips twisted. She should probably worry about the people. They let Henry go in first. He disappeared, the others followed, and there was nothing to gain by staring at what swallowed them. Pilot turned and sank down, sitting on the dais, listened, heard footsteps, Henry's breathing, steady and even. A man who faced down at Comet wasn't going to panic in a tunnel. Heard him ask, crazy calm, will there be light soon? Closed her eyes to share the dark. Now from Henry's point of view. First, we must enter her, hardly comforting words. After guiding him around a sharp turn that cut off the last light from outside, the hands fell away, leaving Henry to walk on his own. Worse and worse. The dark gained a palpable presence, thick with ghosts, with skulls on poles and bones in walls and bodies fed to alien guts to nourish the few behind him, who'd be ghosts themselves soon enough, with no one to care for their bones. And was that why he was here? Henry reined in his imagination. The floor was smooth, worn by generations of feet, meaning the tailings routinely came and went this way. They weren't being cruel. They couldn't grasp how terrifying walking blind into the unknown was for him. This was their home. And he walked with a hand out for fear of running into a wall, but didn't crouch. Was grateful for the respirator as the air became metallic and stale. Had soundlessly counted to 33 when his boot landed on what wasn't packed dirt and rock, sending up a sullen echo, and Henry knew where he was. Inside the buried sleeper ship, the Kitchener. 14 voices spoke as once, low and respectful, intoning, "Mother, we have come." In an answer, lights flickered, steadied, stayed on to dispel ghosts. Dim lights scattered, revealing a different corpse. It had been a ship. Generations had scavenged what they could, leaving little more than a skeleton of struts and cable, of metal too thick to cut or carry, as far as Henry could see. The historian whispered in his head, she was built as a resource for her passengers, to disassemble once they awoke. This much integrity, it means the ship successfully compensated for the landslide. The ceiling, look to the ceiling, Henry. Turn the page, Julie. He looked up. The ship's structure overhead appeared intact. On his own, he would have assumed those scavenging hadn't been able to reach it. She protects them, even now, Osmond said with a mix of triumph and grief, a true mother. The tailings streamed past Henry, confident in this, their most sacred place, expecting him to follow, so he did. Osmond, seeing through his eyes, gave him what she could. The ship must have been buried before the core could be jettisoned. Someone knew to tap power for lighting, maybe doors, maybe more. She didn't elaborate, perhaps reluctant to ask him to search for what more might be. No one could provide him with a map for what the Kitchener had become. They passed through a series of corridors and room-sized cavities, walled in rock, roofed and floored by ship, and he lost his bearings. If they abandoned him here, he'd never get out. There seemed no fear of that. Every few steps, a tailing would turn to check on him. Another reached back a hand as if wanting to touch him for reassurance or offer it, but here, for some reason, forbidden. It wasn't just him. Henry noticed these people who'd caressed and held each other in the mound, kept their hands at their sides and distanced themselves. The linguist Somchai noticed as well. Each comes alone to a place of judgment. I think that's what this is, Henry. You're to be judged. By what? Rena, the biologist, sounded alarmed. The answer lay ahead. You're to be judged. Henry's composure threatened to fracture like the panels of the ship, and he focused on the garment on the tailing in front of him, made himself look for similar sheets of plastic film in his surroundings. Found none, this portion of the ship thoroughly stripped of movable material, but the distraction helped. Thinking of the past, of what the tailings had endured, helped. The passengers staggering from this ship, waking to what must seem the end of all hope, had nonetheless torn a legacy from the rock around them with axes and bare hands. They had proven their worth over and over, up to him to prove his. Their destination was a chamber wide enough to house 100 times their number, lit with a double ring of lights, dim, brightening at irregular moments. What fed them appeared close to failing, not a good thought. Henry studied their surroundings, giving Osman as much as he could. There were no furnishings, but the walls had been left as they were, unscavenged. In places, they'd been reinforced from material from elsewhere in the ship. This would have been where the passengers gathered before being taken to their pods. There should be. There, Henry. This as his gaze crossed a wide, unlit opening. The doorway leads to where they slept. Arbiter, the tailing speaker beckoned. Approach our mother. Tell her your words. Prove who you are. They'd formed a circle around the centermost spot of the chamber, separated by an arm's length, pickaxes out and held ominously on shoulders. And as Henry walked forward, two moved aside to grant him entry and stepped back, closing him in. He looked to the speaker, who called out loud and sure, Mother, see us. With the words, the 14 raised their pickaxes and slammed the points into the floor. The sound was deafening. The purpose clear once Henry saw the circle of dents left in the floor. Look beyond to see larger and larger ones. They'd come here, done this, to record who was left. Time after time, fewer and fewer. It was tragic and incredible. Henry brought out his pickaxe and went to the middle, thought of the farm and straightened his shoulders, brought down the point with all his strength to mark the end. Henry, I too am seen, he said, as much to calm Flip as Killian, also listening, from whatever they'd infer from the hammering wouldn't be good. Then, answering to impulse, Henry dropped the axe and pulled out his badge. Hear my words. I am the Arbiter. I've come to take you home. Arbiter, keyword accepted. Henry didn't know who was more startled by as the words filled the room. The tailings had obviously never heard their mother respond, and the lighting grew in intensity, changed color to soft blue, became a projection on the floor, the Arbiter's seal. Seizing the moment, Henry stepped into the projection and raised his hand with the badge. It's time to go. Come with me. What about our chickens? Someone cried out. Thinking of his grandfather, Henry had to smile. Them too.
I love that the chickens get to come too.
It's always about the chickens.
I mean, yeah. But what a one! I'm so glad that we're almost twins. Happy book birthday to each this world. And I'm sure that our friends at Baka Phoenix would be able to set up those in the audience with their very own copy. It's a birthday gift, but for you guys.
That's absolutely true. Yes. And I'm there on Saturday.
Amazing.
My first in-person signing since 2019. So I'm looking forward to it very much.
That is incredibly exciting. I'm so glad. So there you go, friends.
Thank you.
So I know what I wish for myself this weekend. But what are some of our wishes for Ephemera for over the next year?
We don't have any in the chat, but do you have any?
I do. I was really touched when Julie said that our reputation precedes us. And so I think my wish would be that we use that to just do good, right? Use our superpowers for good and for bettering the community and the space that we're in.
I think that's a really lovely one. I wish for even more emerging and diverse authors next year. I know there's new authors coming up all the time writing incredible stuff, and we're constantly discovering them. So
yeah, and so I also wish that we get to make more friends next year too.
Mm-hmm.
It's building our community. And I unfortunately seem to have found myself without access to cake or candles this year.
That is okay. I have it. It's not cake. It's actually donut from Donut Monster in Hamilton, but it has candles. It's on fire.
I mean, we're all about the pyrotechnics here. I also wish for more pyrotechnics.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, everybody,
your wish in your heart, hold it very close. And 1, 2, 3. Huzzah!
Huzzah!
I think that means it's all going to come true.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for a wonderful party. Prancy, I have it on very good authority, had a wonderful birthday. and thinking about the past 3 years of Ephemera and the year ahead, we are beyond thrilled and humbled and just ecstatic to be able to be here with all of you.
Thank you so much. Truly, all of you are the best birthday present Ephemera could ask for. All of our readers, all of our listeners and watchers. Until next time, please don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Ephemera Series and subscribe to this YouTube page. We'd like to thank the Ontario Arts Council and the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America for their funding assistance.
And as we close out tonight, we'd also like to thank our fabulous readers and performer and composer, Alex White, our friends, families, loved ones, and you. Thank you for staying with us, and here is to another great year ahead. We will see you next on December 21st, right